amazing. They look like you should be able to find them in a lot of the bigger, more expensive department stores.
I love this shrug. This shrug is by far my favorite accessory with this clothing line. This shrug allows me to wear it short and sexy or long and a little bit more flirty and flowy. So the transformation just happens just very uniquely by flipping the garment upside down. So if I remove my arms, flip the garment upside down, losing that scarf and collared effect, but again, taking that scarf and transforming it to the lower half, making it long and sleek. Super simple.
The Beanery Depot and Deli. Coffee, made-to-order subs, snacks, and more. Meatball sandwiches, fresh and hot. Pepperoni rolls, fish sandwiches, chicken, milkshakes. The Beanery Deli. When you're hungry for something special, and it won't cost you a lot of beans. Join and save at Sam's Club, your local club, Boardman, 6361 South Avenue, Boardman, Ohio. It's Sam's Club. Join and save.
Hi friends, I'm Gary West, and whether you find Augustine's Pizza at your local grocery store or at their restaurant in Newcastle, the folks at Augustine's Pizza hope that their pizza is always your first choice for any and all occasions.
What's inside? Come on in and take a look at the menu. There's many barbecue delights, ribs, chicken, and much more. Salads of every kind, sides that'll tempt your appetite. And we have eat in or take out at Big J's Hurricane Grill. Maureen and Big J say everybody is welcome.
Bill's Bake Shop will make you happy. Bill Cast is the owner, and he and his staff keep the tradition going with all those bakery items that you remember as a kid. Just to name a few items, Bill makes cream sticks, cinnamon rolls, bear claws, cream horns, cannoli, cakes, pies, cookies, bread, pizza, and so much more. Bill's Bake Shop, located at 228 North Liberty Street in the Mahoningtown section of Newcastle, is open Tuesday through Saturday, 7 to 5, and Sunday, 7 to 2, closed on Monday. Bill's, where smiles are everywhere. Call 724-654-4223.
It's winter, so come on inside, sit down, grab a cup of hot cocoa, and watch NCTV45.
The Crane Room for your lunch and dinner rendezvous. You'll enjoy their pleasant atmosphere. The Crane Room takes pride in their wide variety menu. Appetizers, sandwiches, soups, salads, entrees, pasta, and the best burgers in town. Newcastle's best selection of domestic, import, and craft beers from around the world, and the Crane Room features a 35-tap draft system. Ask about their daily specials that will please you every time. The Crane Room is located at 3009 Wilmington Road in Neshannock Township. Call 724-656-1553.
It could be you, it could be me, it could be everything we see. Given the day, given the time, given the moment. It could be you, it could be me, it could be everything we see. Given the day, given the time, given the moment. Some of it comes.
The Globe Leader, your hometown newspaper since 1880. Go to nwglobe.com to read fascinating articles. If you know someone who would enjoy this amazing publication as much as you do, why not give them a gift subscription? I'm excited about getting this into the homes of as many people as possible. Please send their email address and we'll do the rest. Call 8098. That's the Globe Leader, your hometown newspaper since 1880. All in a nutshell, 102 and 117 North Mercer Street in Newcastle. Visit Keith and Margot Jackson for that new look. The latest in women's and men's clothing. Treat yourself today. You'll be glad you did. Joshua Sun Rehabilitation Center. From the moment you arrive, you know that you're in the right place. Dr. John Wrightson listens first. He pays attention to detail and then makes the determination. Joshua Sun Rehabilitation. We make the pain go away. Tuscany Square Restaurant, 3470 Wilmington Road, where old world charm meets the modern conveniences of today. Spacious seating and amenities await. Fresh ingredients that make that just right pizza or entree. It's Tuscany Square for your next event. Stop and see us or give us a call at 724-654-0365. The Land of Oz, located next to Subway on Washington Street, features unique clothing for that special design, one of a kind. Also accessories of every sort. Team logo and school logo. Also jeans, tops. For that special look, it's the Land of Oz, located in downtown Newcastle next to Subway.
Welcome to NCTV45. This is Focus NC with Matthew Gieger moderating, and I'm joined here with Barbara Grossman. And today we're here to discuss about the revitalization of Newcastle, specifically downtown Newcastle. And to start off, we'd like to remind the viewers what we discussed last time. And we were talking about Barbara's marketplace concept. And when we ended up leaving, we left last time, we were discussing parking issues that might have come up. In investigating this issue, we actually wanted to take a little bit of a note because Barbara was able to map out. She was looking at it, finding ways we could get more people down here. Well, when we look at the maps, and we went on Google Maps, Barbara and I, and we were looking around, it seems there's plenty of roads, there's plenty of traffic to bring people downtown. The issue, parking, as it turns out, hasn't been a bit of an issue. We've talked to some community leaders, so we don't have to worry so much about that anymore. But what we discovered was that in order to revitalize Newcastle, we have to see where people are coming in from the community and where they're not. I mean, there's a lot of places you can go shopping, right? You can go out to the Walmart in the Union Square.
Sure.
That's a big one. Or if you're from Neshannock, you don't need to come out to Newcastle. You have your grocery store. You have a Giant Eagle, and you have a Save-A-Lot if you're going to buy on the poor end. As you're coming down into town through what's 18, and they're calling that they're calling that Northeast at some point. It transitions. I'm not exactly sure. I don't pay attention. I'm like most cliche Pennsylvania drivers. I'm not paying attention to the roads, what they're called. But so you come down, and you can go to an Aldi's if you're maybe you're a lower income person. You want to stretch your dollar some more. So you have all these stores on the Highland. You have Joseph's, which transitions down into Mill Street. If you're going north, it becomes Mercer Road, and then it goes out to, and you can find your way to Mercer or the Grove City Outlets. And so when you look at the maps of the area, you actually notice that all the highways, you go up to Mitchell Road out into Newcastle, or out into Neshannock, you end up heading on the highway, the it's 422, yeah, 422, sorry. Mm-hmm. And so you go out to 422. Well, that takes you up to Union Square directly. If you're coming down through Newcastle, you're going to come through 18. And if you're coming through 18, you're going to end up on Northeast Street. Well, there isn't a lot going on in New York. We're down here in the Washington Center, and we're on Mill Street, and we're next to Washington Street. And these streets have been beautified. They're very wonderful. And we're looking here, and we're seeing what kind of businesses are coming in. They're banks, they're law firms, they're more what you might call the professional services market. And so, we were talking, we believe that in this marketplace lifestyle concept that we introduced last week. And for the marketplace lifestyle concept to work, you need customers. And the idea is that you have businesses where people can interact, retail can come down and visit. Well, in the professional services, you might come down for an eye appointment, but you're probably not going to come down every day to live your life, to do your shopping, to do everyday needs. And so when we look at the traffic patterns, what we see is that the actual street that is the main street of Newcastle is West State Street. And there's not a lot of development on West State Street. There's a few stores here and there. And what we were hoping that as Barbara explores this marketplace concept of hers, that might be a better place to really develop as a retail district. Here over on Mills Street, on Washington Street, more of a professional services district, and over in Northeast or on West Street, talk about really building a retail center, and that would be a great place. I mean, a place people can shop, a place people would want to come to. They would need come to every day. And basically, if you're coming down to Newcastle, you're coming through 18, and you might divert off to Union Square. Well, the kind of businesses we need to see to come in here, the retail, are the kind that are going to say, "Hey, come through the downtown Newcastle, come visit us, come walk the streets." And come. Don't go to, we're not saying don't shop at Union Square, don't shop at Giant Eagle, because those are part of your life already. But we need kind of newer businesses, new ideas, things that are going to draw people down to what we would call the retail district of Newcastle. And so, and I think that was a very good discovery we made. Barbara did did a lot of research, and she's still working on the marketplace concept. Now, I want to turn our attention, though, to a couple other issues that Barbara raised. And last week, she had mentioned that she wants to revive the community atmosphere, and we feel that that's very pivotal. Well, I was actually down in downtown Newcastle, and one of the things I've heard from people, even in the area, from the Neshannock area, is that it's not safe down. It's not a pleasant place to be. And so I was down here at the Two Rivers Coffee Works, and my brother's band, full disclosure, Colville, was down here playing, and I help out with the sound. We had some coffee, and it's a nice little setup there. It's in the old Warner Brothers Theater, the first theater in the country, actually. So it's very, or ever to exist for that matter. So it's actually a very interesting place. It's a beautiful building. It's really the kind of story that around the country you'd want to hear about, a revitalization. This is a historic building. It's so significant, and it's what makes Newcastle, as part of the Rust Belt revival, a compelling story for everyone to pay attention to. But they have they have some lawyers up there. They're getting an optometrist in there, and you have this coffee shop that serves them. I mean, they're lawyers, so they're working late. They need their coffee, and then you have owners there like Hector, who's just very peaceful, calm. And when you're in a high stress environment, so you come down, you visit someone who's very, very calm, doing a lot of things at once, but also imposing this very relaxing atmosphere. That's the kind of environment that's like a really good synergetic, what you'd call a synergetic business. Everything works together. And at the same time, you also have him, he's progressing. They want to build a bar and grill, and they're in the works of it, and they're going to be opening. So they're not just serving to the professionals who work down there every day in this area. Now, before we went, there's a person we'd been talking to that we know they're out in Neshannock, and I'm not doing this to put down anyone in Neshannock or anyone in downtown or anything, and I'm not trying to make people angry. But there is kind of a community disconnect between the haves and the haves not, the people who maybe are living down, they might not have work, they might have they might be low income. There's this real attitude between the two. And I've encountered this on both ends. What the poor think of the people with more, and what the more affluent members of the area think of the other people. There's this, if you're in Neshannock, for example, as just one example, there's an attitude of, we're from Neshannock, they're from Newcastle. It's not one community. It's not a sense of we have a community interest. It's a self-interest, and that's going to be actually a very reoccurring theme as we talk about how do you revive a community like Newcastle. And one of the story, what happened on Friday was we were talking to this person with children, and I said, we reminded them that there was this concert downtown, and she's like, oh, I'd like to go, but it's downtown. It's downtown. It's not safe. I'm like, oh, you sure? Because, they've really done a lot to, there's not really crime. There's a police station. I said, there's lawyers' office up. These guys are, if you're going to mug someone, it's probably, this is the kind of person who might have something of value on them. I'm like, if they're not afraid to come out at work at late, they're working late at night. They're not afraid to come out in the dark, go to the parking lot, get in their car, drive down. They might walk up the street even, a ways up. You don't know. And they're actually right beside a bridge. And these kids, they're making these little jokes about, what kind of people they expect to come down there. They expect to be attacked. Maybe someone a homeless person jump from underneath the bridge and, try and snatch them. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of ridiculous. And I said, that's not the atmosphere. So I come down to this place, and I'm in there. We're enjoying a cup of. I had a cappuccino actually, and a biscotti. They were actually really good, and and we were down there, and it felt safe. I mean, I'll be honest. I felt safe. I felt, I would walk, and I'm a like a 240-pound. Male, white male, pretty big. Many people aren't going to work with, but, so I talked to some of the women who showed up, and you know what, they felt safe too. And, lo and behold, this person who had been talking about with this attitude comes in here, and, and with the kids, and so, and I go up to this person and I say, so, and I razz her a little bit. So you feel safe? You're not going to be attacked by some psychotic homeless person? And this person's face turns red, and they're like, "No." I'm like, "You sure you're not just feeling brave today?" She's like, "No." I'm like, and this person said, they'd come down more often, and so we've talked about with your marketplace concept about getting people on the street, and we're watching, and very few people are walking down the street during the day. I mean, honest, I mentioned I was from Crawford County, and if you know Titusville, Pennsylvania, it's where the oil industry actually started. A very first oil drill in history. It's part of this region's real cultural history. It's small, and I see more people walking down that street, and it's generally considered far more dangerous than Newcastle. I mean, at one point it was actually the meth capital of this region. I mean, which is very sad. I mean, really, when you're considering, even when you're being nationally recognized for your methamphetamine problems, that's very sad to go from what really sparked the evolution of the manufacturing sector. I mean, and when you talk about revitalizing Newcastle, you have to talk about Titusville. And you have to talk about the region, because that's how we are a region. And as a region, we developed. We came up from the oil industry. You had tool and die in Meadville, and then you had steel come down into Newcastle down to Pittsburgh. So we have to talk about the region some too. But when we see these attitudes, this divide between the haves and the haves not, the word, during the conversation I had with this individual, the word dysfunctional mass came up. And really, what that, you have to question, why, it's very difficult to deal with dysfunction. It is. It's very it's very dysfunctional, and people tend to avoid it. And the issue with avoiding dysfunction is that you end up problems linger, and I think that may have been part of the reason why, individuals may not feel like Newcastle is part of their community. And what I wanted to talk to Barbara about today was maybe a story. She was just telling me about a story about some of the people she's talked down about Newcastle. And, it's very easy to write off people who are dysfunctional as being lost causes. And so you were just telling me a story about down at the
Salvation Army.
Tell me about your volunteer work.
I think first, Matt, I'd like to say, let's address the word dysfunctional. Dysfunctional has nothing to do with monetary means. We can live in a palace and be dysfunctional. Sure. We can live in a treehouse and be totally rich. It's not a matter of what we have or do not have. Yeah. Some of the wealthiest people are literally living in poverty because they have no true spirit of life and love.
Can I have you define that a little bit? Do you mean like a deficit of their life? Like not financial poverty, but you mean more about
and that's what we need to address.
A lack of real living.
What I see, and I'm just going to say it because it needs to be addressed. I see a lot of beautiful, wonderful people trapped in a mental prison. Okay. Regardless of their race, regardless of their financial situation, regardless of their belief, regardless of anything. I see Newcastle and its residents as being it's a mental prison, and what we need to address is ignorance being a lack of knowledge, not knowing something. And in that, primarily a lot of heavy discussions are addressing racism and prejudice. And yes, we can address those subject matters for as long as we want to. But we have to get underneath the skin, and we have to stop masquerading around. Yeah. And it's not that difficult to be kind. When I first came into Newcastle, a few years ago, I've been discussing how, struggling to find my way, and, I was just finding my little areas that, I would feel comfortable in. Okay. And so something that I began to do was volunteer different places. And I've volunteered at the library, and I've volunteered down over at the Red Cross, and so
adding to the community.
Yes, it's it's just in my nature to go out and do that. It's like I care, but I don't know how to do things. Okay, so I get caught up in my frustration with the organizations. Okay. And this is what I really want to address. Over at the Salvation Army, for a while I was volunteering on their bread giveaway days. Okay. And this is where I notice what one of the major problems is. It is so easy for us to ignorantly prejudge. Yeah. In the prejudice. I met some beautiful, wonderful people, and just in sitting there talking to them, I will talk to anybody. Okay, yeah. I love to strike up conversation. I love to get to know people. You say hi, hello, what's going on? Yeah. So that's what I did. I see these people, and yes, their faces seem downcast. They seem, the attitudes. So, I don't care about the attitude because I understand it's on the cover. What's underneath all that? Yeah. There is something beautiful underneath all of that. And so striking up conversation and saying, so, hey, hi, what's up? What you got going on? Yeah. And they just look at me like, who are you talking to, you know, and I ain't got nothing, you know.
So a lack of community.
Yeah, and it's, you know, and
involvement.
instantly, you know, you have that look in the eye is suspicion.
Yeah.
It seems to come off as anger. It seems rude, or it seems ugly, you know, and most people would walk away from that.
Yeah.
They
and
really
that
would.
adds to the community divide that
Yes.
we're talking about here.
But, you know, I was like, nope, I'm going after the pearl. You know what I mean? I'm going to go scuba diving, you know?
You're someone who believes in talking. And
I just know. It's not even a
believe in-
belief. I know that there's a beautiful life underneath all that.
Yeah, so
you know?
you're really trying to, you know, you're the kind of person who's looking for this sense of community.
Yes,
looking
because
for
that's what's
the
wrong.
person, you know, you're not looking at their circumstance.
No.
You're looking at the
because
person.
all that is changeable. That's temporary.
And maybe kind of that's a lot. Not a lot of people seem to share that these days anymore.
No, because when I started to talk and I got them talking, you know, and they said, well, I ain't got nothing going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I laughed. I said, you got something going on.
Yeah.
You did something yesterday. You woke up this morning. What did
Yeah.
you do before you came here? And you're going to go do something when you leave.
Yeah.
Even if it's to go home and sit on a couch, you're going to turn on a TV and watch what show or what
Yeah,
music are you going to
yeah.
listen to? You got a cat, you got a dog. What do you do?
Yeah.
You know, and so they just like looked at me for a minute, and then all of a sudden, you know, this three of them, they just start talking, and they say,
Yeah.
well, you know, I just go to work. What do you mean you
Okay.
just go to work? That's
Yeah.
your life. That's
Yeah.
your livelihood. Where do you work at? You know? And somebody else has a dog, and somebody else is doing this, and somebody else is doing. I
Yeah.
got to know these people. They started to open up and share, and instantly the attitude changed.
Yeah.
Their eyes brightened up. And here's what it is. Somebody noticed them and gave them value.
Yeah.
Here's the problem that we don't understand is out of the mouth we have the power to speak death or life.
Yeah.
And I am just sick and tired of people putting people down.
Yeah.
Because having risen from degradation
Yeah.
and ridicule all my life, I know better.
Okay.
You know, there is something beautiful, and when we address the life and we begin to help somebody appreciate their life and the value of it, I think that we make great mistake, when we attempt to address the fact that living life is all about one consistent event after
Yeah.
another. What's the calendar event? Okay, you know what? We can go on and on and on
Yeah.
with events, but that's not our daily life.
Yeah.
And we need to address daily life, and we need to address the value of literal life.
And I kind of want to I kind of share some of the perspective. I actually came from a very dysfunctional and impoverished family, and I came from a community that was really kind of broken. And there was this view that if there, and some of it's not people's fault, but people, when they don't know how to deal with bad situations and, you know, the emotional and all the you know, it's very uncomfortable, but people tend to avoid uncomfortable things. And so what I think's happened in a lot of these Rust Belt communities, at Newcastle included, Townville, Meadville included, is that people tend to start sticking to these, you mentioned cliques last time. And what happens is in these cliques, you kind of develop attitudes of, well, we can't help the poor, or the poor, these guys are just snobs, you know, and so they kind of make up their own stories of why things are, and they start looking at from the situational, like, you know, there's always work to be done, but is that work always paying? Most of the time, a lot of times, more and more, a lot of the work you might have been able to get a decent, a survivable income on, you can't necessarily find that now. There's a lot of industries that are losing their incomes. You know, media, for one, is one area where it's becoming harder and harder to get advertisers and to get the actual money to pay for these essential, you know, conversations on television or in the newspaper. And that's a national issue. And so, you know, in one of the dysfunctions I had was when I was growing up, I remember being, you know, treated differently. Like, you know, maybe you weren't invited to community events because they figured, oh, you don't care about the communities. And that was one of the attitudes I had with this person who I was speaking with on Friday about, was that, oh, they're not interested in going down and buying local because, you know, they don't care. Well, it's not that they don't care. It's that they had such amount of money to spend, and to stretch that dollar, you're going to have to go to the cheapest thing, in which tends to be naturally sourced. And so, one of the things I noticed, and when I went to college, okay, mind you, I went to college at Allegheny College. There's a lot of more affluent people from Pittsburgh who go there. And when I came in there, they didn't know I was poor. In fact, they thought, if you listen to how people speak, it can really reflect a lot of people. And I speak pretty decent English. In fact, I've been kind of criticized by some working class people. They thought I was uppity or stuck up, like I was from New York or something. and there's that attitude.
That's the prejudice.
Yeah, and there's a prejudice. Yeah. And I was badly treated for that. But in this environment, I worked in the accounting office, and they assumed I was middle class. Now, there were some times I didn't do things that they did, and they assumed, like, for instance, have certain things, and they just assumed I was cheap. Well, I would hear them. I would listen to them talk about how they viewed poor people, and how even those who had poor dysfunctional backgrounds shied away from talking about it. And so, and I've seen that in Newcastle. I was, a lot of these people, there's an emotional element to everyone. And a lot of the people in Newcastle, they succumb to this emotional, avoiding emotionally uncomfortable, of, maybe, communicating with people who could maybe help them get a job, or help them, learn some valuable skill that they could use. And so there's a lot of aspects. Like, for instance, I know personally, I got involved in this, and I was kind of a poor person incognito there. And there's this one lady, I went and helped her. She wanted to see if her son was hanging out with this girl, and he was worried about her, trying to get her pregnant or something, so his middle class family would take care of him. It was, I kind of laughed at her, but she was serious. There was this real concern to kind of keep a divide, that they were going to be used. And personally, there was this girl who I knew, who was very much wanted my attention, who wanted me to be in love with her, basically. And what ended up happening was, she realized she did this for a year, and and she spent this good amount of time really trying to push herself into my life. And then when she found out I was poor, she started shying away from me. And that, by that time, I'd started caring about this person, and she had told me a lot of lies to try and get me to be interested in her. And she ended up really hurting me. Well, and it just led from one thing another. And instead of being honest about it, she actually slandered me to a lot of people we knew, called me a weirdo, and all these other stuff spread to people. And a lot of it was her parents. But one of the reasons, I was in college at the time studying physics, a very difficult subject, and when you're dealing with emotional issues, it becomes very. And I ended up, I did graduate, but I did end up not being able to go on because it was too much emotional stress.
I think you bring up a good point there, Matt, because I believe that the healing that we need is, we have to literally address things, and it can be uncomfortable. You know, if you've ever gone in for a surgery it's sometimes the healing pain is worse than the illness pain. And I think that one of the things that we have to step into is those uncomfortable waters, and admit to ourselves how many people are really looking at another person, and they're looking through their own lust and saying, they're not seeing somebody for who they really are. They're projecting an image onto that person, and out of their want or their lust, they want that person to fill a need for them. They have now created this illusion. And how many people are being hurt this way? Because people are after, what can I get? What can I gain? I want you to do this. I want you to fill this need. Instead of us stepping down and letting ourselves give and open and letting things come together properly.
We talk, and I just talked about the emotional pain. I mean, one of the reasons I started studying politics and trying to understand really public policy and law and government was that 9/11 occurred in my senior year of high school, and it affected me. It was a tragedy, and it did affect me emotionally, but it also had a positive influence. And it was actually, this person ended up being more of a negative influence on me than 9/11. And so, you know, in some ways, it almost worked to where I ended up really basically, you know, finding some positive, and that's, you know, that's the kind of attitude that it takes to move on. But we talk about people who don't have that attitude, how we perpetuate dysfunction, how we perpetuate division between people. In that, you know, we talk about, do people? I talked about this person I was speaking with on Friday, or it was Saturday. Now that I think about it, but I talked about this person, and you know, there was this sense of people downtown Newcastle don't care. Well, when you talk to people who are downtown Newcastle, as Barbara will testify, there's a sense that the more fluent people of Newcastle don't care. Do the businesses care about Newcastle? Does the government care about Newcastle? That seems to be a big issue.
I think it's just everybody is in their own agenda.
Yeah.
And it's like we were discussing, you know, it's like a masquerade.
Yeah.
You know, we have to get out of the ballroom and we have to get in the living room, and we have to learn how to sit down and eat a dinner together. Do you understand?
Yes.
You know, it's the commercialism and our need to be either to entertain or be entertained. We've just gotten so removed from what life should be.
Well, so let's talk about, you know, get us back and to put this into a context of the revitalization of Newcastle. Let's put it in the business. We seem to be we're talking about what we might call a community interest. Do people have an interest in the community? Instead, we see people who are interested in their self-interest, and we are, you know, these businesses come in. They seem to be just, all right, how much profit can I get? And you have a lot of national chains here, but a lot of the local buildings, and we've been discussing here before the show in our little our little prep session here about how a lot of these buildings are actually down here are actually owned by people as far as Florida, Tennessee, and there's some very rough buildings out here. The old King's Jewelry building, for example, is in very bad shape, and the fellow who owns this building, he owns the old. He's actually retired, and I believe his niece and nephew are in charge of the actual chain now. But he still is involved because he derives an income from his retirement income from these buildings. But the issue is that there doesn't seem to be an interest on his part for the community oriented of this building's in bad shape, I need to do something about it. And maybe there's a financial reason, there's a lot involved in these kinds of issues, but is he just involved in his self-interest? My chain's doing fine, I'm getting the income I want to. There's this, but that doesn't help the community. What is it? That building standing there is an eyesore, and like I mentioned, this area of town is getting a lot of lawyers, doctors, some real interest. It's becoming what you might call a professional services sector of this town, and that's good because it brings in a lot of the incomes that would be required to support maybe some shops, the Pearl Bee Market, for example. That would be, you would need for these artisans. Artisan crafts are a little more pricey, and maybe the low income individuals aren't going to be purchasing it. But you need some people with some upper middle class who are really going to come down here and build it. And then of course there's going to be lower end shops or stores. We were hoping maybe a grocery market. Erie actually has a place called the Erie County Markets. It's farmers come in and they sell their food there. It's very cheap. You can buy it. It's not cheap food. It's inexpensive and it's higher. It's very high quality. And this is the kind of people from all income classes come in here. Restaurants buy bulk, and that's maybe a kind of store that could come in. They're not open every day. In addition to the Pearl Bee Market, which would feature artisans working, crafting on stuff so you could see them, so you could learn things. And we've all, maybe we also talk about other stores that might come down into what would be the retail center on the West State Street, which is, very big. It's probably the busiest artery in the city, or at least one of them.
I think that we need to not be afraid to tear down
Yeah.
so that we can build. There's a lot of structure here that honestly we can just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Who am I? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? But it's like if you're gonna come in somewhere and you have a procession, sometimes it literally takes an outside view.
Yeah.
Here I'm looking in your window. Here's what I see. Here's a fresh
Yeah.
perspective. And Mike, don't be afraid to tear something down. Don't be scared to take something away so that you can continue to grow. If it's dead, it's dead. You're not going to eat moldy bread, are you?
No. And this is kind of gets at, again, the community interest. There's some buildings there that, there's some historic, beautiful architecture, disrepair. But, for the community to thrive, the community interest of everyone, and they need some either worked on or, in a few of them, maybe torn down. Now, and this puts us in competition with these people who own the businesses. And like I said, if there will, some of them, they just might, I'm not vilifying these business owners, these places. It might just be a financial issue. And this is their property. And, and I'm not someone who believes you should just go around eminent domaining everything. You shouldn't be, government shouldn't just seize property. It's, just because it's there and it's in the way doesn't mean you go in and force it out. But, it is starting to harm the image of Newcastle. As lawyers,
May I suggest that the invitation be set out to them and invite them in, either as part of the live audience or to come on to hear, because right now, we don't know what they're thinking, and we don't know why anybody's doing anything. We're looking and we're sharing our viewpoint, but I think it would be wonderful, never cast anybody out, but let's look at this as a whole, and what can we do?
Yeah, and that's there's a vested community interest in, and I think maybe that's, we just spent a little bit here talking about how the people who may be middle class, the working class versus the poor, maybe these people don't have jobs, maybe they do. We talked about, and honestly, maybe there's an issue of not enough jobs, and job seekers are not job creators. Just because there's a need for jobs doesn't mean there is going to be jobs. And that's a community interest issue, and it seems like that the heart of the problem is that people look at it and say, oh, that's those poor people's problem that they don't have jobs. Well, it's a community problem, and when people start recognizing that they're part of the Newcastle community, Neshannock isn't just Neshannock. It's Newcastle. It is a part of Newcastle, and I think a lot of the driving problem is we've gotten to this point where people in downtown say, "Oh, I'm not part of uptown. I'm not part of the Neshannock area." And the Neshannock people, well, they're not part of us. There's that divide, and a lot of these business guys are like, "I just need to make the money. People don't care about my business. I'm going to make my money and then I'm going to leave, and I don't care if there's a vacant building." And maybe they do. And there's a lot of financial problems. And the people who have owned businesses, they certainly aren't immune to it. They rely on customers. They rely on people coming in. These people who own the buildings down here, they rely on businesses coming in, and they're hurting. And financially, there could be a problem. Now, some of these buildings, we mentioned the old Warner Brother Theater have been great success stories. Well, not all of them have been, and we need to have a real conversation here about these buildings. There's I believe it's the King Jewelry building. The fascia is actually falling down, and that creates a real safety hazard. And there's also, from my understanding, a couple buildings where there are people living in, and these buildings might have mold in them, and so that creates another hazard. So it's a real hazard to the community, and we're going to have some people from government come in here and talk about this, but there's a real need. Why haven't either the owners been contacted to rehabilitate the building or tear it down?
Simply put, if your village needs swept, sweep it,
Yes.
clean it,
Yes.
maintain it. You
Yes.
know, it's how do you eat? What is your diet? How do you take care of your body? How do you take care of your town? How do you take care of your family? How do you take care of your area? You know, it is all of our problem, and we need to address it together. You know, let's clean it up. Let's do what we got to do. Let's stand up and take our responsibilities, and let's do it together.
Yeah. Everyone lives, you know, you may not live in downtown Newcastle, but you know, what happens in downtown affects everyone. What happens out in Union, what happens even, you know, and like I said, I talked about this regional economy started, you know, Erie came in as a little bit of they were transporting goods down the Erie Canal into Erie. Then eventually oil was drilled in Titusville, which then spawned the need to carry it down to Pittsburgh. Then that spawned the tool and die up in Meadville, and that came down for railroad and the steel industry, and that regional economy. Well, then it spread to Detroit. They started building cars, and then that spread to the rest of the country because suddenly you had a middle class, you had consumption, and now we have Silicon Valley. Well, you know, the country's ailing right now, the whole country. Yes, jobs have been coming back, but you have a real income disparity in our country still. You hear about this all the time, and the issue with that is that, you know, too much income is being concentrated at the top. Not enough's getting down to the people so that they can afford to live, to buy what they need. You know, some wants, build homes, have children, do those kinds of things. So it's all it really is all interconnected. So even maybe you don't directly affect what happens downtown, or you're not directly affected what people have up at Neshannock, but when these all come together. You know, you do affect each other, and we've gotten to a point so now where we had this community divide. And you know, we're not vilifying anyone. We're not trying to get people angry. We're not trying to get people to go out to riot. What needs to happen though is people need to come together, and they need to, you know, talk to each other. Why is there a problem?
Why is there a problem?
Why isn't things being
this
being
is
swept?
a symptom of spiritual starvation.
Yes.
People will never be able to heal a spiritual wound, and that is what they are attempting to do. We are literally experiencing a symptomatic outer expression, manifestation of a spiritual starvation. Okay. And we need healing.
Okay.
Yes.
And so, you know, for maybe people who are not non-spiritual, to put it in another ways, is people. It seems people are trying to avoid each other. That you live you're part of a community, but you're not communicating with the people. People affect you. And you were talking about how these people feel. Well, when those people came in there, they were downcast. They'd been interacting with, maybe they hadn't been interacting with other people. Maybe the people were bringing them down. Well, Barbara came in. Suddenly they saw value in their lives. Well,
but it was always there.
Yes.
I just showed it to them that they have that.
And you see how you impacted them. Every person in a community affects everyone else. And that kind of interaction, if it's a negative one, people are going to respond negatively. They're going to be downcast. They're going to avoid you. They're going to close in on themselves. Whereas if it's a positive impact, you find the value in them, you see them as people, you start to get back this community sense.
It's called
you
love.
Start to build well
it's called love, L-O-V-E.
Yes.
Love, and love is kind. You
and
know?
that's one way of putting it. But you know, so when we put the community, there's also this, suddenly doesn't become just about me. It suddenly becomes about the community. And when you start seeing business owners that coming in that really care about the community, and yes, the accounting has to work out. You have to, have the income and stuff. But when you have people who are vested, maybe they make little decisions. Like maybe they start saying, I'm going to clean these windows up. My customers won't be in. Maybe I paint my building. Maybe I do something nice. Maybe I start remembering the faces of people who come in. Well, then suddenly they get more customers. The more customers, the more income they have. Maybe they hire more people. Maybe they raise the wages of their employees, to keep them. And then maybe other businesses say, hey, there's some economic activity going in, so they come in. And so, when you have this sense of community, it really there's a way of bringing, common interest. I've mentioned before in more of my technical language about balancing interests. Let's go, for example, the government. The government's job is to kind of serve as a balancer of everyone's. It's supposed to, when it forms regulations, it's supposed to say, okay, businesses need certain, we can't just overwhelm businesses with costs. But at the same time, we can't let businesses get sick. There was a place up in Erie, and they've gone through business owners. They were actually a chain. They have a new business owner, but the guy in there, they were said to have the best wings. Well, he would buy rancid wings at a really big discount and then soak them in bleach. Clearly, that's not the kind of public health issue that needs to be taken care of. And so what ended up happening was he obviously got shut down, and now they have new owners, and that doesn't go on now. But he was, and when they asked him, "Are you trying to hurt people? Are you trying to make it?" He's like, "No, that's why I put it in the bleach." He didn't understand that was, even though they weren't making them directly sick, that was making his regular customers sick over time. He didn't understand that in his mind, that was perfectly healthy meat. Well, to most people, that's not. And so he didn't want to waste the food, and that's why he was doing it. And so he wasn't necessarily a bad guy, but he was doing something counter to the interest, and that's why we have government regulation. Well, in coming down to Newcastle, we talk about the involvement of government is, and Barbara mentioned last time, what are the two biggest employers in the area?
The two top employers on the list of the top 50 employers of Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Number 1, Jameson Hospital.
Okay.
Number 2, the government. What does that tell you? That tells you that the primary income in Newcastle is being made off of sick, poor people.
Well, and can I just explain that maybe a little bit? There's a lot of poverty in Newcastle, and the state has come in and it provides it's SNAP benefits, food stamps, and it provides cash benefits. Just what people traditionally think of welfare. It also provides health care, the access program, and a bunch of CHIP and all these other things. And so what you see is that the money coming into the area by looking at them as the top employers is coming from outside the state. And that tells you the real problem is that there isn't a community-based economy.
Exactly.
What there is there's an economy based on outside funds. And really, you look at the troubles the federal government's had, the state government's had, that could dry up at any time. And even Jameson's been having issues. They've been closing. There's been some facilities talking about eliminating the LP nurses who do a lot of LPs or NPs. I think it's the LPs. I'm sorry if I.
If we had to put it in an image, I would say it's the leech on the flesh is bloated, and we need to pull it off so that people can get back to work.
I think the better way maybe of putting it is that it's not that government's a leech or healthcare workers, because healthcare is very important.
Sure,
and it's very good.
Sure, it is, but properly. Yeah, we have been under improper structure. We need to get back to proper structure. Is that
it was responding to a community need. There's no the economy of Newcastle isn't stable. It's risking. It exists. There's too few people. Only so many people can go into healthcare. Only so many people can go into the government, and these dollars are being fed from outside of the community. There's nothing driving the new. There's no real new. There's not much of a Newcastle economy. We're not. Newcastle used to make steel. It makes fireworks. All right, it still has that, and that's a great industry. You can see Zambelli's down in Washington, D.C. That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing when you think about it. Washington, D.C.
Well, I think
and
that
Newcastle
the one company, they still store the fireworks here,
yes.
But I believe, if I'm understanding properly is that the fireworks are now being made over in, I think it's China.
And that might be the case.
So that has removed a lot of jobs
and
work.
You see, we don't have that production we used to have. Nothing's producing anything new to produce the income to support government, to support the
so what are we building?
the healthcare. Yeah. So and that becomes a sense of a lack of community now. We don't have a community economy that's providing for the needs. We have economy that's just maintaining people, sustaining people. When I'm very interested in not hurting people, not ending, but I believe that you have to get public assistance people off of it. You have to fix the problem. It's there. It's become a subsidy program instead of creating a healthy economy where people drop out of it and then they need a little government assistance. It's become the way of life, and that's not good for anyone. That's not good for taxpayers. And there's a lot of anger when people say that. And a lot of part of it is because you see on the national level, you see especially from the right side of the aisle, the Republican side, you see people saying the way they approach it is we got to get these bums off.
I think it was initially designed to be a temporary program, so to
yes.
help you in a temporary situation, and then but you move forward.
And the problem, and I believe one of the issues with the programs is that it doesn't leave room for growth. It doesn't leave room for transition. And you know, back in when Clinton was president and the Republicans were, they came up with a welfare to work program, and it actually had some mixed success. It's had a big problem since the Great Recession hit. People the need had expanded. The amount of time they'd need to stay on welfare rolls had because there weren't any jobs for them. That created a problem, but initially in a normal circumstance, it actually helps because it rewards. You can get extra benefits whenever you're working, and so that was actually very smart. Now, one unfortunate thing is that one unfortunate issue is that the welfare to work program kind of creates an employer incentive to where you now have employers who will pay less. They know people won't stay. They don't pay. They have an incentive. Okay, so I have a worker come in. I can just pay a minimum wage. He's either going to go to a minimum wage trap. You get kind of in a minimum wage trap, where what happens is people don't have the option, or the employer says, I can pay him less because he can collect food stamps and supplement what he needs to live. And so what ends up happening is the government starts subsidizing. And so that's a real an issue where a program needs redeveloped, and employers, and you need economic development.
But how do we develop self-value, self-esteem, and self-worth? That comes naturally through honest work.
Yeah, and that's
and when we're being treated as human.
And we can see that, I think we can see at least that the economics and the social aspects and the individual are all interconnected in ways, and that and a lot of people, they'll value themselves based on their jobs. There are people who they'll make $25 an hour, and they'll be very arrogant, and they'll be very condescending to other people. And if they lose that job, suddenly they're very nice to people, and they're
identifying with the wrong things.
Yes, and so and that might be part of the issue. And another part is that when people, like you said, you came in from a bad situation, and you went out and you saw ways you could become part of the community.
I rose above my life circumstance.
Yes.
Is what I did, and everybody can do that. It's it's we all do that, and it's just so it's frustrating to me because I see a lot of manipulation going on, and I see a lot of naivety, and it's just it's sad.
Yes, and that's that's I think part of the overall reaching message we're trying to hear is we're trying to really instilled the need to, build something, make the economy in our country and in Newcastle seems to really have come about everything in life has become about the economy. The economy exists to provide for human needs. It's about distributing the resources, the wealth, giving people what they need, the food, the maybe a car, their goods, whatever they need
and
to
it's
live their life.
And it's as changeable as we choose to
we've
change
inverted it. And so my argument is, and I guess our argument here is in inverting it, what's ended up happening is that you've eroded away the community. It's all about the economy, but the economy is suffering because there's no community.
It's unbalanced.
Because the economy is not servicing the needs of the community. And if you're someone who believes, well, downtown Newcastle is, the people there are, they're throwaway. They're not worth anything. Well, then you're not going to see the community need. And if you don't see that, well, then suddenly Newcastle it's a lost cause, because the Newcastle, you can't revive it without the people in it. You're fighting each other instead of having, the poor people. What's my interest in the community? The affluent people. Well, I don't. These people aren't going to care. So, what is my interest in it? And so but I think there's a lot of ways that maybe if we start speaking, going back to the story I started off with about this person down at Two Rivers, this person came down, and we were speaking, and this person suddenly saying, well, maybe Newcastle isn't so bad, maybe these people aren't this dysfunctional mass. And they started communicating. Yeah, there's issues people have, but then they start saying, well, to see the value in them. This person started to say, well, maybe I'll come down more often and find some other stuff, and hopefully, and if there were more business, this person said they'd come down. Actually, the person's married to was thinking about opening a store down here, but felt the idea that the rich people, the people come in, buy stuff, then the poor people come in to rob them and break the stores. Well, that was
where does it end?
And that was part of it. But then when this person actually came downtown, they're like, well, maybe this is a better try. There became this feeling, this identity. They felt like they were part of the Newcastle community, and that they maybe, it wouldn't be such a tragedy. They stopped focusing on, what could go wrong. They started focusing on what could go right. And that's I guess if this show were to have a purpose, it would be about making people see that there is a community interest in their community. And when you do that, you start having people come down, you start having people get together, poor, wealthy. You see, this guy isn't just trying to rob me. This guy isn't just trying to take advantage of me. And you don't see, this guy just doesn't look down on me. This guy doesn't care about me. That is what happens when you bring people together. And I think, there's negative people, and they become obstacles, but eventually they'll see the need to become part of the solution, or they'll just be in their own little world. But and that's fine. But you need that interaction. You need a sense of no longer just looking at what's my self-interest in this, what do I get out of here, and more about what is the community interest. And that's something that can start from Newcastle, spread to Lawrence County, spread to Northwest Pennsylvania, spread to Western Pennsylvania, and maybe.
Matt, I've had this project that I've been thinking about for the last couple of years. I mean, I have primarily been a waitress in my life, and so I have served the wealthy, and I have volunteered at places, and I have served the poor, and so I think about all this stuff, and honestly, I've met beautiful, wonderful people in all places, and other people that I'd rather not. It's not about who has what. It's the attitude, it's the mentality, it's the heart. So for me, that's what I look into, and I think, what kind of project? Here's a beautiful project for those people that would really like to develop something. You talk about wanting an event. Let's put an event together. Let me put this out on the table. Those people that want to come together, that are serious about, showing some commitment to the community, let's build a giant picnic table, okay? let's get together. Let's take off our clothes and put on a knapsack, okay? Let's all wear one piece of garment. It looks the same. No makeup, just, no fixing your hair, and let's go on our bare feet, and we look the same, we're dressed the same. Here's some tools. Let's build a picnic table. Let's cook a dinner together. Let's sit down and let's eat, and let's get to know one another.
So in other words, this market, the marketplace you'd like to develop, this market state lifestyle puts it not what divides us, but what brings us common. You're not talking literally about everyone should be the same.
It's not the same. We come together with likeness. Okay,
maybe
those
we
things
see
that
the
we have
value
in
in how
common.
we are different instead of seeing it
we
as
come
a negative.
together with the things that we have in common. But if we just stay with the sameness, eventually that is going to cause us to repel from one another. It's literally what we have that is our differences. Our differences is our glue, but it is the differences that is the most complicated and difficult matter for us to overcome in one another, because we don't want it, we don't want to accept it because it's something different. But it is that very difference that will complement and what builds, and that's what we need to do point blank.
Okay, and so that's probably a pretty good place to leave it for today. And like you said, we're discussing this marketplace lifestyle concept and bringing back the idea of a community revitalizing Newcastle downtown. Well, this is Matthew Gieger from the Washington Outsider. This is NCTV, Focus NC, and I was joined by Barbara Grossman. Thank you for being here. And
thank you for having me.
Next time we hope to continue this conversation. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Make it Lanigan's Irish Pub, where you'll be amazed with the weekly specials, pub grub, salads, burgers, sandwiches, Irish specialties, and desserts. Lanigan's has a full bar featuring domestic, craft, and Irish draft beer. You can also book a party at Lanigan's at 126 East Washington Street in downtown Newcastle. As they say at Lanigan's Irish Pub, the best Irish food since Ireland. Call 724-657-3444.
It's Little Johnny's Pizza 2 in downtown Newcastle with a great variety menu that you will tell everybody about. Chris Quiera, the owner, is here with more information.
Stop down and see us at Little Johnny's 2. We're located at 130 East Washington Street, or give us a call at 724-657-2210.
Let's talk with Norm.
We're with
Norm Lutton.
Norm, you're the owner of Crazy Car Restoration. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's a new company we're opening up. Originally, we was Lutton Auto Repair, and we're adding on a little bit. And we're trying to bring out some custom cars for people somewhere in between the $5,000 and $20,000 range, what people can actually afford today. Anymore, all these cars are so expensive. We're just trying to make ends meet for other people.
That sounds great now.
But I've been fixing cars for over 35 years.
That's great.
So when you have a repair, big or small, call Norm.
We have a great relationship with Main Street Clothiers and Custom Tailors in downtown Newcastle at 210 East Washington Street. And whenever you watch Focus NC, my wardrobe is furnished by Main Street Clothiers and Custom Tailors.
Whether it's time to fix the furnace, throw the salt, shovel the drive, it's Paul D. Weller Hardware. We have what you need. Whether it's time to get warm, make the macaroni, make the ravioli, make the pizzelles, throw another log on the fire. It's Paul D. Weller Hardware. Hey, let's go sled ride.
It's Butts Flowers when you want a wide variety of flowers for any occasion. They also have a selection of fine gifts and more. Butts Flowers is conveniently located in downtown Newcastle at 120 East Washington Street. Call Butts Flowers at 724-652-7727 or toll free from anywhere, 1-800-443-7726. It's Butts Flowers in downtown Newcastle.
It's 2P's Thrifts and Gifts, 2626 Elwood Road, for the best in giftware and original merchandise. Stop by 2P's Thrifts and Gifts. Check out their many treasures. gently worn clothing, original items, one of a kind, and also furniture. Something for everyone. Men's clothes, accessories for the house. It's 2P's, Thrifts and Gifts, 2626 Elwood Road. Stop by. There's a treasure waiting for you.
Whether it's a scheduled appointment or same-day service, DiCaprio Carpet Cleaning offers 24/7 service for commercial, industrial, and residential, as well as fire and water damage restoration. Using state-of-the-art technology, DiCaprio Carpet Cleaning experts are ready to professionally clean your carpet today. Call DiCaprio Carpet Cleaning for a free in-home estimate. Thank you for making us Lawrence and Mercer County's largest carpet cleaner.
And remember, nobody gets your carpet cleaner.
It's winter, so come on inside, grab a cup of hot cocoa, and sit down and watch NCTV 45.